Test, test, test. Okay, we're going to continue our meeting on policing. We have our legal team on the screen. And before we hand it over to them again, does anybody have any questions about the presentation that was made so far? About the difference between the mandamus, why it's under the band letterhead, versus the policing model we're going to look at moving forward. So typically, historically, from a governance standpoint under Pimichigamak law and policy, we're going to develop a national policy on public safety. It's going to have rules. It'll be similar to the national policy on finance administration, because our policy is to do it right. So once that's done, Chief will call a four-council meeting for the traditional councils to look at. Once they endorse that it's in the best interest of the nation, then from there we will get an executive council order made to accept how the Pimichinak Police Service policing model will look like. So I think we're in concurrence here about the steps where we need to go. So eguta. But here, we William Washburn. And the late weed Pete Waskahatman Usigishniatat Kisenis from Alberta when he was in council. Kitansimayana William Washburn. Okay, William. Harry, you want to give him the mic?
Thank you very much, and good morning and good afternoon, legal counsel, the executive council, four councils, and the citizens. I'm very happy to see us together in accordance to our laws. I'm very happy to see our executive council and the four councils. And I see the power to it. In our language, it is said, "Egesemans kamek kitaskiwaw kinipimyo kitinyemyo minawasak." Egesemans kamek na maminoyawin piatagenimuin minamenenimuin minamenuit sanituin. And that's what Pimichigamak is all about. And that's what the first written law says. So I'd like us to continue that. Oganiga animeno under the English word spokesperson, but in our language, egese manuit, egese manskagwak, minegese manskatak, itaskino. That's very powerful. That's a law to itself, and it's not written. But I want to share something that I personally came across as a former executive council member. And it ties into exactly what we're talking about here. At one time, I attended the Pacific Institute conference in Ottawa. It was all about policing and justice. And I always took witnesses with me when I went to any meeting. I took the 3 senior former band constable, now safety officers, to be my witnesses. At that meeting, at that conference, there was a lawyer that represented all of our CMP across Canada. He got up and he spoke, and these are his exact words. I don't take orders from anyone, not even the chief and counsel of the band. So I got up and I surprised him. I said, I guess I came here for nothing. All the money I've expended to travel here to attend this workshop, to come and speak on behalf of my people, and to be able to tell you the struggles and the problems that we have, that we face in our home community. I guess it's not worth it for me to be here, so I threw the mic away and I got up and about to leave. It changed the whole atmosphere of that conference because the former indigenous RCMP members that retired kind of got up and spoke up. And they said, hold it, Mr. Osborne, don't leave yet. They took a break. And after that, the meeting turned out to be what the meeting was all about. Throughout the meeting, I had a sense of what this conference was all about, because there were judges, former judges. The famous one, Brian Stewart, was there as well, and some other ones. I had a feeling this was a preparation meeting for what was to come, much like the IRS claims processes. And at that time, I foresaw this is what eventually is going to happen. For all the people that have been incarcerated for little problems, little situations that they didn't have the money to pay for the lawyer. So they ducked whatever charge they received, even though it was not true. In some cases, it was not true. So in essence, I asked a former judge about that. He literally cried right there because I spoke the truth of our people, the plight of our people, the struggles of our people, exactly what Pimit Chickamauga is talking about here. I support the strategy of policing of public safety wholeheartedly, and I support my leaders. But I would like my leaders to take a bold step on account of the federal government and the RCMP for breaching their own law, big time. Negligence, breach of treaty to protect and to serve the people on their lands from any harassment from anybody and from anything. I think we have a legit lawsuit if that's the case. One strategy is to pursue the protocol process that's in place, and the other strategy should be to take these governments to court for negligence. If we look at the scenario in modern times, if we had the police force in the community of Cross Lake of 50 or more, maybe, just maybe, we could have prevented the massive suicides, the fatalities, the domestic violence, the drug abuse, the alcohol abuse, and the list goes on. Maybe. And at the same time, we do have community restorative justice, but I see where that's going to come from in time once we have the policing service in place. That's what I see. That's what I feel, because Cross Lake as a whole is at risk. The leaders are at risk. The RCMP are at risk. More importantly, we as a people are at risk big time. We have to stop this death and dying one way or the other by taking action exactly what our leaders are doing. So I support that. It's been a good 3 days, and that's the way we should be doing it. So I commend our leaders today and the four councils. Let's stay on Pimit Chickamauga. Let's stay with Pimit Chickamauga. At the language of the law, it's a mansiwin. Like I said, man, Scott Tawiak, no one will argue with that. Kitagaga Pino, you are in solid ground. Tinigitagaga Pino. No one else does that anywhere. No one but Pimechagamak. So I wholeheartedly support you. I commend you. Do what you need to do because you will be doing it right as our national policy states. Kusane, nas comment no, gagano.
Well, before I hand over the mic to the lawyers to continue with their presentation.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you for those comments in terms of safety and policing and what that needs to look like for the community. As you remember, before we took our lunch break, we had just gone through very briefly in terms of the considerations for our regional model. I'm going to bring back up the slides, and we are going to look at some considerations we're respectfully providing in terms of a Comishkamack specific police service. We then have a final little section that talks about further about the Manitoba Police Services Act in specific one section, and it also we wanted to bring the discussion back to the First Nations policing policy, which was originally created in 1991 and then updated in 1996. It remains in effect today, and it sets out the standards that First Nation police services should be getting both historically and presently and going forward. So I'll just take a moment to bring up the slideshow from where we last were. So as I said, looking at a Comishkamack specific police service, there are some considerations that we'd like to provide akin to the ones we provided on our previous slide about a regional model. So for a Comishkamack specific service, there would be policing resources in the community, such as professional standards, major crimes, other specialized units. Comishkamack would have the voice in terms of the deployment of your police service, what detachments would look like, how many detachments there would be in a community, where the headquarters would be. However, this would also potentially reduce some opportunities for collaboration with other First Nations. In terms of a Comishkamack specific police service, one of the key considerations would be the cultural responsiveness and competency for officers. However, Comishkamack would also be required to ensure that their officers, including any specialty units, are properly trained and qualified, which is more responsibility that might be needed. We understand that a Comishkamack specific police service, you would look, from what we heard during our strategic planning sessions, that such a service, the community would be looking for officers to come from the community and police the community, and in that way, officers would have cultural competency, but they would also understand the needs of the community. Similar to the regional model, the government would be required to fully fund a Comishkamack specific police service at the same standards as all other police services in Manitoba benefit from, that section that I went through earlier, with the addition of a culturally responsive perspective. So we've talked a lot during this presentation about the different types of models, some considerations that Comishkamack might want to look into in terms of both the models. And we also talked briefly about our strategic planning sessions in March of this year. I want to say, as an attendee at those sessions, how grateful I was to hear the stories, the experiences, and the realities truly of what community members in Pimeshkumak face. As an Indigenous woman myself, my heart truly goes out to what you all are facing. And we wanted to, as through our other work with our Indigenous clients, we really recognize that in order for us to be effective advocates, we need to hear from you and learn from you. And we were truly honored to have that opportunity and to have the 4 councils share their stories and their experiences. That being said, we wanted to go back, as I mentioned very briefly, to the First Nations policing policy. So we recognize the policing that Pimeshkumak ultimately chooses based on what best suits the needs for your community is a politically based decision. We recognize that Pimeshkumak has the inherent jurisdiction and sovereignty to make the decisions that best protect the safety of your community members. This inherent jurisdiction and sovereignty was recognized specifically in the First Nations policing policy. For those of you that may not be aware, funding for First Nation police services across Canada is provided via the federal First Nations and Inuit policing program. Funding is generally split 52% federally, 48% provincially, and the policy is one of those foundational documents that underlies the FNIPP. As I mentioned, the policy was first created in 1991, and then it was updated in 1996, specifically to add more protections around vulnerable Indigenous populations, such as women, elders, and children. That 1996 version, 30 years later, is still in operation. The policy specifically contains recognition as to the inherent jurisdiction and sovereignty of First Nations, as well as progressive commitments on the level and type of policing First Nations should benefit from. We just wanted to share a couple of those sections with you today, and then we'll close out our presentation. In terms of the purpose and scope of the policy, we've included the fact that the policy is in essence a practical way to improve justice administration for First Nations through the establishment of your own police services that are not only professional and effective, but they're also responsive to the particular needs of the community. Julian had mentioned earlier in terms of our work with NAPS and how First Nations in NAN communities, in NAN territory, I should say, are different than Southern Ontario policing, such as the City of Toronto. We recognize that for Pimeshkumak, you have your own particular needs, and those look different than other First Nations. We also want to draw attention to the policy principles, specifically that First Nation communities should have access to policing services that are responsive to your needs, but are also equal in quality and level of service. And that the selection of the particular policing model, which we have provided some considerations for you to consider, should balance the need for cost effectiveness and policing needs of your community. In looking at the objectives of the policy, one of the objectives of the policy is to support First Nations in becoming self-sufficient and self-governing in the establishment of structures for the management, administration, and accountability of your own police services. It's also another objective to ensure First Nations people enjoy personal security, public safety, akin to other people in other communities. Lastly, we wanted to draw attention again to the section of the Manitoba Police Services Act that references the creation of a First Nation police service. And it sets out clearly that the government of Manitoba and government of Canada would be entering into agreements with one or more First Nations. So again, that evidence is that it is truly an exercise of inherent jurisdiction and sovereignty on behalf of Commissioner. In closing our presentation, I'll just take down the slideshow for now. We've been honored to learn about Commissioner in terms of our strategic planning sessions, our discussions with Councillor Muswagon, and our discussions with Terry McCaffrey. It's helped us to understand the current challenges you face, as well as how policing has been historically in the community. For example, we understand that previously there was a border control program, but it was expensive and it was time consuming for officers. We recognize that the policing and community safety in your community has changed over time, and we are grateful to have had the privilege to be involved in these discussions and to assist however we are able. This presentation is respectfully being provided to give a little bit of background on our firm, the work that has already been commenced, the correspondence that we have sent, and the discussions we've had, and considerations. I keep using the word considerations in looking at policing models. Pursuant to that, if the attendees have any other questions, we're happy to take them. Otherwise, we will wait to hear further from Councillor Muswagon and Terry McCaffrey in terms of our next steps and the decision of the four councils going forward.
Test. So
Test,
I
test,
hope
test.
the policing we talked about today, tawapat na may kayo, tagus kayo na kayo nigatege. But under Pimichikamak laws and national policies, the instructions being given to Terry, along with John Duncan, is to develop a draft framework on a national policy on public safety and policing. There are two parts to this. Public safety is one and policing is the second part. When any regulator, any government in the world, any governing bodies anywhere, whether it's the Canadian government, American government, European governments, what they do is they lay out a plan. They develop draft rules, how they're going to take steps to address the issues facing the government with challenges. So one of the things we're going to do here, when we worked on financial management, there was a policy that the four councils established in 2002 called the National Policy on Finance Administration that set rules and accounting standards to meet or exceed GAAP. Policing and public safety. What we're going to do is draft a framework. It's going to come back to the people to have their input as well, because we're only human. We can miss a thing or two here, and we welcome opinions and suggestions and stuff like that. But it's going to take all of us to make this work, not just chief and council, not just a task force we're going to assign here. So the first step will be creating the national policy on public safety and policing, standards to policing, Pimichikamak territory and its citizens, protective services to our land, our communities, our waterways, our natural resources, okay, all beings, our language, our customs, our traditions, our culture, and our belief system. Poco kinano tananagatene mitwak. Kagitawa stago shiro tago shik. Utagagi anigwago tawino. Womanistic. This is our home. So what Pimichigamak people are going to do is start making some of the rules in their home. For 150 years, somebody else came along with their system of laws, their system of government, and started saying, this is how you're going to eat, shit, and sleep in your home. Because we have a lot of intelligent human beings in our nation, and we welcome that knowledge. Just because I'm a former police officer in Terry doesn't mean we know it all. We invite the views of our people. What's going to make our nation safe and thrive and be healthy again. Policing is more than just policing these two communities in what we call Cross Lake today, Nikikonagos. We need to start policing our land. Too many people come here and make up rules for us. Kinano utagagya nigawyag taskinak. Skuniga ninomo sampo egi po gawyak metsi waganak. Peutana ke yuke maga taga segi niganska ke seman askinu egi utsimut kagi sewya swak from gutawino. Inwe egi utsimut kagi ne onanita egi maga egi utsimut. That was our spiritual mandate. And that was part of our culture of who we are. Kitemageni twin, manachi twin, mamogamat twin. That's who we are in New York. Kikiskisnete me mitet kinogagete ayegutai. Epite got get ya the semagigisigan amakti. The little they had the pagwana masco meeting. Kiwanita no one. We need to get him back. And the reason why it's important that we police all aspects of our nation and our governance to the land and people is this policing model we're going to look at. It'll be multifaceted. It'll be more than just policing these communities. We're going to police our land so we can look after our land-based people and check up on them. Wellness checks. Kuta na Mervin, right? Anita topis kisik. Pentonate, gani puta miskat. Yeah. So I was saying, so we're going to do conservation and policing. Because munagigut simina no my name is Tigusuge Mawin. Tapetatuana Swena Tatuana Swat Tamagwak, our natural resources. We never gave up that right. In our treaty relationship with the Crown, we said we would share the land and jurisdiction. We didn't say we gave up anything for $5. Nobody in the right state of mind would have given up the land for $5. That was just a symbolic gesture in that relationship. It was an economic trade. That they failed that treaty right to protective services, the treaty right to prohibition. So if you look at Treaty 5, NFA, to get what they wanted, Taguanuts, Puguyan get the ship in Amagonok, Tasipagana Nagaten, Taganuts Magans. Onikin Naputa Pasiguak. The head of households need to get their house in order with to minimize the crime. Because when a mom speaks, when a grandmother speaks, the kids listen. Because to talk about housing and the rules to housing. Because many people, unless if you own your own house that you paid for your trailer, all houses under the band are owned by the band. CMHC housing, the band pays for those mortgages. So you're a tenant. Kagis CMHC houses, they get converted to band housing. So the band maintains those. So no different from if you're in Thompson or Winnipeg, when you're a tenant, knows it'll come with rules. People harboring, drug dealing, and bootlegging. What are we going to do? We're going to go hardcore discussions that are going to need to happen. But it's going to take all of us to make those rules. It's going to take the entire community to make our community safe again. So, framework once we get this national framework, the Michoac National Policy on Public Safety and Policing, step 2 will be Executive Council Taninnan. We are responsible for the day-to-day affairs of our governance according to our laws. We will pass an Executive Council order adopting a Pimichoac Police Service model. Model will determine we're going to assemble our own team. We're going to strike a task force. We're going to give them that responsibility to what policing is going to look like. They're going to come up with a plan. They're going to tell the leadership, because that's what happens in government. You rely on experts to put that package together for you, because the chief and council, we don't know everything. That's why it's a team approach. Okay, once that task force is struck, we're going to talk about the policing model, and they're going to start laying out the rules to protective services. So it'll be a unique situation. Our First Nation safety officers, that used to be the band constable program when Canada used to fund it. But when you get cheats, so without Canada, they gave it to the provinces. Okay, are you First Nation safety officers? So they're like band constables, but with limited powers to deal with summary conviction offenses. They're basically the runners for the RCMP. Much paske sila na tayo na mo kaya atsik patayo. Pe winoni gani pinitsik. So the risk is there for them. Thank God that they're gonna taste panigutsik. The way we say, at the same time, to be clear, we're going to have to deal with staff politics. When you're policing with people, when you're dealing with criminal element, we cannot have political staff putting people at risk. He's been threatened. Councillors have been threatened. Staff have been threatened because of staff playing politics, leaking information. What we're dealing with is an international enterprise. It's very dangerous. People cannot play hero. We say nagagawa station sa apit, tagiskwea pasot, tagiskwea skawat mat si maskigia, nagagawa istamamit tonentak, aputa tagiskwea pero boat. Mita to gitago na maganut paskisiga na, awe gati itik. Pite gweska che nagagawa at sa tagwa no nagwi sa tapi hutwi na gigas kita at kagon, kagi paskisogugan ni mogo iskisamamit tonentak when they're not in the right state of mind. Especially with the new kind of drugs that are out there today. And there's people out there that sell drugs like pills, like down. And it's an hallucinate. More ways. More ways. What do you want to do? Because remember, people that play games, the criminal code says aiding and abetting. If you play the blame game in politics. Under the criminal code when it comes to yeah. Okay, so these are the steps we're going to create. I'm going to give her the mic shortly here. So that's the model we're going to look at. And there's been some models like this in Ontario, Terry. Yeah, it's a combo land and community-based policing. So we'll give her the mic, our elder.
Okay, to me, this sounds like a good plan. Things will work. If you have to do a lawsuit to get the RCMP the people they need, based on our numbers, when I came here 30 years ago, we were told that they needed 16 here already, and they only had 12. Now there's that many less. And here's my concern right now, though. Where I live, I never used to keep track of anything that went on because that stuff wasn't in my home. I guess maybe I've been blessed or I was enough of an animist. My kids knew, I brought you into this world, you start doing criminal things, I can take you out. That's what I always told my son. Like still to this day, they know that that stuff doesn't come into my house or anybody that tries to, I won't allow it. But that made life pretty hard sometimes, even now. Somebody broke my window this summer because they know now that I'm keeping track. And if I see something, I say something. But at the same time, one of my biggest concerns in my area is there's little kids walking around with diapers on. That's community safety too. And who is looking after those kids? You know, I don't know. I don't know whose kids they are. And I myself, I'm scared to go and take a hold of a kid that I see because I could be charged the way the rules and regulations are. And also the biggest fear is those dogs in my neighborhood could maul that little child, could rip that child apart in minutes. Like, so who is responsible for that? I know not to waste the RCMP's time if I see, people arguing on my street and slapping each other around. But if I see a gun, I know that I should call the RCMP. But if I see guys slapping each other around, that should be the safety officers. So there's so many things that I've seen that are, when I call the safety officers at midnight for something that they should be able to patrol, they flip it to the RCMP and make up a story that I said I saw a gun. I didn't see a gun, and I didn't say that. You see, so both of these organizations have to be spoken to, and they have to be dealt with. The people that are there have to be called out. Some people can stay somewhere forever, but if they're not doing a good job, you gotta take the bull by the horns and get rid of them and put people in, and it doesn't matter who they are or what they look like. We've gotta have people that are gonna serve and protect. In my area, especially the little kids, because those kids, it's not their fault if they get out of their house. And there's dogs roaming around. And if somebody kills a kid, it affects every one of us, regardless of who let the kid out. There's enough service organizations in this town that they can all get together and help these parents. I mean, some parents are obviously still sleeping at 2 o'clock if their little kid gets out of their house. But just because their parents are sleeping, that doesn't mean they should be able to be mauled by a dog. We can have people going around, helping, putting locks on people's doors. Most houses only have 2 doors if they have that. And then someone will say, well, you're enabling them. That's the only place in the whole community where I would say I want to see people enabled to make it safe for those little kids, because they're always said to be the future. But if somebody mauls one or takes one down in my neighborhood, I'm going I've lost most of my filter. I say what I think now. I don't try to be politically correct, but I will be really PO'd because I've been hollering and saying things to people. Same with fire. In my neighborhood, they don't call the fire department. It's always me looking out in my general area, and I've finally told them, I'm not frickin' Smokey the Bear. It's not my job. If you saw a kid light it, call. You know, those are safety things in our homes too that everybody has to do. But when we leave here, those are my biggest concerns. There's adults doing drugs, and it's all around me too. I've finally been told different things to keep track of. So, you know, but I figure they're adults. If they're going to do that, and they're going to kill themselves or whatever, it's not on me. But if a little kid gets killed right around my place, it's on me too, because I should be able to try to help them. So when we leave here, those issues are out there. Like, who's going to deal with that? Who's going to tell people? Who's going to help these people besides? Because to me, right now, that's the biggest safety concern where I live for me. So, you know, the safety officers got to be driving around. Like, if they're supposed to be safety officers, that's public safety. Sitting in their vehicles or sitting in their shop, that's not safety. You know, that's getting paid for sitting on their duff. And I don't think that should be. So that's something that I'm requesting that people bring up to those people. Because if I saw somebody with a gun, I'm going to phone the RCMP. But if I see a dog and a little kid walking by and going to the water and 3 dogs behind, I'm going to phone the safety officers because I can't move fast enough to catch a kid. My days of that are over. But that's, to me, that's my biggest concern, and that's something I had to say today. And then I can go home and mind my own business for the rest of the day. Thank you.
For that, and then ask about because I think it's really important that you know, you can have laws, you can have policies, you can have regulations, but they're no good if they're not, if you don't have a good response unit that can take your call and react and act on whatever information you have. Instead of questioning you 20 minutes, because that child could be in the water for that long and die. Because it's important that we take everything seriously and we try to encourage our safety officers to go as fast as they can for instances that are not criminal, right? They're safety officers. And with the RCMP, we've been asking them to do more responses to criminal activity to be there. And yeah, they're starting to do more in terms of truck stops and stuff like that. But there's other things that they need to be taken care of in terms of vandalism and drug dealing, and and I think those are being able to distinguish who to call, who do you call, kind of thing, right? And I think that's also an important thing. Where's the dispatch, and how's the dispatch going to deal with that? Who are they going to send? Whether it be safety officers, they should have access to the safety officers as well to send them for certain things, and then certain things for the RCMP. And this is where we're trying to see, learn from those things that you're talking to us about in creating our own police force, and how do we structure it, and how do we process certain things to ensure there's a rapid response to these things that are occurring. Not just in case of emergency, but an ongoing community policing, they call it, to be actively out there to do certain things, to drive around, like you said, or bike around, or whatever that needs to happen. And I think that's what we need to start, make sure that we start building those ideas that you have. Like, I was trying to take notes. I've been trying to take notes all the. My thumbs are getting slower, so I'm recording now to get the proper things. And so I encourage you, if you have ideas, let us know what your ideas are. Don't go home and then start posting on Facebook, they sort of done this or done that, whatever. it doesn't make sense to go there. It's better to do it here now and give us our idea, give us your good ideas in terms of what the solutions are. I see your hand up there. And I think that's what we need to hear from now. So, kanang patutena, I guess, at the animal tamok, when you can do that here now. Okay, Sally?
I'm just going to ask, is there any more questions for our legal counsel that's on the line right now? Okay, because I think maybe we should take those first, Chief? Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see everybody today. Tapagas, help me talk, I mean, no, I pay me to go ta. Hagayo, drugs. Ayo, I want to ask if there's a policy already for drug testing. I think there's ayo clear pa masa ki test yawak other departments ma. Huh? Okay. Eko se ayute kaso ta kagi motion niya ni tayo drug testing is and everybody in that meeting but one I say gispagin skin so but it was not tayo. It didn't come to anything later on. So I kept asking about it. But anyway, why I did that, they said, people that work in places that are addicted, that they could get the help that they need instead of like coming to work, taking care of people while they're high and whatever he said, that they would be given a chance. Will they choose their job or their drugs, right? So there's quite a few reasons why I motioned that at the time. But I want to give an example. Me as a parent of my children, I don't do drugs and I don't drink. So I can tell them, I can lecture them, and I can ask them. So like same thing for what I say in your position. I mean, in other departments, there's directors and, you know, drug testing. These departments, a department all the way down is we because if you want to clean up our community, I'm not saying anybody here is on drugs, but I'm just giving an example. I use myself as an example as a parent. If I want to clean my house, I better be clean too. You know what I mean? So I can say, yeah, you know, son, please don't, you know, it's not good for you. You know, and I can say that I did it before, which I have. And I always tell my children, don't follow, you don't have to follow my footsteps. You don't have to make the same mistakes I made, you know? So this way I can lecture them, even by my own experiences. But, so that's one thing I'd like to, we participate for sinaniwa kayo drug testing itagatos ketsekin niwa pukoy sa inyo gatos kawatsik the community, you know. Kami nayo, like all the councils sa isto, elders, women, youth, you know. I know they're not into that, but we still say so the people can pakiskanin tayo sa isto. And another thing I would like to bring up is dogs. At yung makise, ano sige ki mau a child or a youth huta ita kimate posted on one picture a couple of days ago. And we need the dog control. I think it was I don't know if a BCR was written up for it a few years ago, before your time here, sir. And I believe it was, but it was not enforced, you know. Ako ma-notice sama, when I was working at the health center, I seen two young people come in gimago mi ko sikut ayawa at demo. Peka nota, ako peka uta. Ako ane na uta gimago miti, uta uti. Ako ane motsutsi wap mawanta nursing station. They said she was up to date with her tetanus shots. But eventually she got flown to Winnipeg because it became infected, they said. So we all know we've had a lot of dog problems, dog biting, dog attacks and whatnot, they say. And sometimes I think because, well, when we were growing up, we didn't have that problem, they say. Apete mana atema ke pistata ke kiskinegate machimaskigi making the, that's what I'm thinking. I'm not sure, say. But we need to have dog control in our community. Because stray dogs tapamute, I don't see the hard part of that. I really don't see why it hasn't been done. People are getting bit. If you call the nursing station, they can tell you how many people have been bitten, you know. Fortunately, we haven't had any, in so long. Ito nisan tansyonat sigo tayo katema kasi sa puguta Hispanic bego. But dog control kita, if it's in the BCR, you can check. And if it is, enforce it right away. Dog owners is to license their dogs or something. Questa tanana temyo. In the city, they have dog control. You need to license your pet. You need to keep your pet in your yard or in your home. They're not allowed to roam around, in the city. So, and nakasita sa mistigo sa kegoneto tagik. Ako kisna na isa, people are getting attacked and bitten and whatnot. Asa no mageso a few years. Eka so sa me kasi kita tayo na makita Hispanic isa. So I'm really hoping, I'm requesting and I'm asking and I'm pleading. Nantay sa tatwad sa kate mo ikay sa owners kaya at sa po the owners just let them, roam around and whatnot. Ang kanina pego at sige man matipat sa kito sa kate minyo ko. Tapo ni mako mitsi sa inyak. Even my granddaughter, mama na pagkit now, tamete at 190 she's 10 years old. As kanista mo tayo na mo mani maniten tan temeta eta puisyo kanikita ito say like close by. Apo mana I walk her to school when she misses the bus. Kustaman sa tayo Hispanigot. Manawana, she doesn't live far from the school, So people should not be afraid of dogs, and we are afraid of dogs. People are afraid of dogs in the evening or people walk around with a stick to protect themselves. I've seen it and I have done it myself, So that's what I wanted to come on. Ano makait Dwayne? Ega sapat at wanawi ane. Ako Facebook tatyas tayo ni se. Utay sa tapian mo tamak. So I'm thankful today for this opportunity for the ones that came here that we can speak. But these are very important. There's other issues, but today's like the drug thing and whatnot. So please do something about the drug testing. Do it soon, and please do something about the dogs. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. I think that very good points. We had, just to answer your first question, we were the first ones to get drug tested. That's to take the lead. We did that already. I'll get to you, Rita. I got your hand. Jackson, da? Okay. Okay, Rita, so we did our drug testing and we're also looking at the dog stuff and peita mo te mane ke mga kamit paski su se mga mane ta. Kigat set na ke ita mo te paski su mi to ne ki cute now. Mga imas na gasta mo ayo te church to ano pa to ne ki pagit now. Kasi si ke bagotine. Ako yung I was just wondering if there's questions, how long are they good for? Okay, there. If you have any questions for the lawyers, if you can ask the questions and then combine it with what questions we have or comments. Rita na, eh? Yeah. Then after that, Jackson and then Mervyn.
Good afternoon. For the lawyers and also for the Istoya Council to listen to this part. In 1998, we drafted our permit laws, but our laws are conflicting. When you look at this first written law, it says here in a fifth whereas that the permit creation seeks to ensure that its laws are in harmony with the Constitution of Canada. So here we are trying to make our laws, but yet we're bringing in the Constitution of Canada's laws. And someone mentioned about the police always favoring or saying that they're giving more rights or protecting the legal rights of the drug dealers or anything. But coming from the police, they have to do that, because the Charter of Rights and Freedoms play a role in it. And we have these Charter of Rights and Freedoms to roam anywhere we want, reside anywhere we want, park anywhere we want, live anywhere we want, presume innocent until proven guilty, and whatnot. Freedom to assemble and all that stuff. And here we are talking about trying to establish our laws, yet we are also bombarded in trying to be harmonious with the outside laws, the foreign laws, I'll call them, in terms of from our perspective. So that's one thing that I always talked about this part of the section. Whereas the Peninsula Cree Nation seeks to ensure that its laws are in harmony with the Constitution of Canada. Having that in place there doesn't give us the autonomy and sovereignty we talk about in terms of creating our own laws, because we're saying in these laws that we have to be careful in whatever laws we make, that we think about the Constitution of Canada and their laws. So that's one point. Now, in terms of this mandamus, it's good that we are thinking about going that way. I always like playing what you call the devil's advocate, to discuss, to bring things forth for discussion purposes, not to be for or against, but a discussion, something that I myself have known or researched and want to bring forth as something to discuss or get clarification, or at least give input to the people that are here that may not even know what mandamus is, because I'm pretty sure not too many of us really know what it is. It's a high legal term. But anyway, mandamus was made famous when Apotex Incorporated took Canada Attorney General to court, respect their pharmaceuticals, or their drug. From there came an 8-point test that you had to satisfy. And 4 of them have to do with our right as citizens, as humans, and for us to be to do it the court themselves. But at the same time, mandamus is not a legal right. It's not a legal right. It's not a fundamental right. It's a remedy that anybody can use and invoke and take for courts to order any organization, even the Government of Canada, Department of Justice, to act on certain remedies. Yes, I know it's binding, but at the same time, it doesn't force the governments or the legal entities to make the necessary changes. It just orders them to seek some kind of a remedy, but it doesn't force them to. If let's say the police are doing what they believe is their mandate, and they can come back and say, "Hey, we're doing the best that we can. We're following our mandate. We're following our term of reference. There's nothing else that we can do." Then where does that leave us as a nation? Where do we go from there? Because I believe the Justice of Canada, Government of Canada, an agreement between Manitoba and the RCMP, or agreement between Canada and RCMP, or Department of Justice and RCMP agreement that they have, if they believe that what they're doing in terms of the agreement, they're fulfilling the agreement, their policies, their legislations, their acts, their bills, and whatnot, laws, and they come back and say, "Hey, we are fulfilling our side of the bargain," then where do we go from there? You know, that's all I wanted to really convey here. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you for those comments. I'll start with what you brought up initially in terms of enforcing your own laws, and I think that comes to mind in terms of what Councillor Muswagon was mentioning earlier in terms of a framework and a policy on what Commissioner wants to have enforced and what that looks like. So I would start there for that point. In terms of the mandamus application, I just want to make sure that there's no I can perhaps provide some clarity in terms of that. So mandamus, it is a court proceeding, and I know that mandamus is it's essentially a fancy legal word, but it's bringing a lawsuit essentially against the government of Manitoba to fulfill what they are already required to fulfill in legislation. In the Manitoba Police Services Act, there is nothing in there that says this act doesn't apply to First Nations or First Nations communities. Simply, Section 2 says that the minister is responsible for ensuring adequate and effective police service throughout Manitoba. So we've sat here and we've heard a lot from folks, and we appreciate the stories and the experiences that people have shared with us in terms of that safety, community safety is more than just policing. We've heard about the drug crisis. We've heard about the issues with youth. And in terms of that, it can't be said that a community that is your size is only allocated 5 officers. Julian mentioned the example earlier of Selkirk, Manitoba, which has 11,000 in terms of a population, and they have 18 officers and 6 support staff. So the application for mandamus or the lawsuit against the government of Manitoba would be to say, look at our police service, look what we get from the RCMP. It cannot be adequate that we have all of these essentially public safety crises occurring in our communities. It cannot be that that is adequate and effective policing, especially when you compare us to other non-First Nation communities that get significantly more resources and significantly more officers. So I take what you're saying in terms of that if the police officers feel that they are following their mandate, this application, this lawsuit against the government of Manitoba will not make them change their mandate necessarily, but it's about a short to medium term solution that gives more officers in your community while Commissioner works on what Councillor Muswagon was saying in terms of a national policy and framework on policing, protective services, community safety, and looking at those policing models to see what best fits Commissioner. As you know your communities, you have lived in your communities, you are best suited to know what you need for your community members, for your community safety, for elders, women, children. I hope that that's a helpful answer. I do appreciate, again, you bringing up those points and bringing them forward for discussion, as that's, that's a key to our working relationship with Commissioner Mack is having discussion, understanding experiences, stories, and realities.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Ann Ross. I have, well, there's 2 letters here, right? One from Cross Lake Band and one from Pimitsicamago Kimauen. Many people here, nobody wants to say anything right now. We need to elaborate more on this, because I know for a fact this is a very important matter to us, for Pimitsicamac people. And we need to elaborate more, get more understanding so people can put their input to where we are going and where we want to go. Because right now, I don't know how many RCMP we have here in Cross Lake. And I don't even know how much the stats of the calls in 1 month or in a day. Those are very important for us to know, because that is how we can aim for more policing in our reserve, because this is a very big reserve. We don't need like 4 or 5 RCMP out there. We need more. And it's policing. It has to stay in Cross Lake. We don't want to take it out to MKU, AMC, or AFN. It has to stay. It has to stay in Pimitsicamago Kimauen or the Cross Lake Band, whichever. Nimita te nanud se ganas pitsawiya kute at nasisete pe mistake ko niya ni musikate for the past 3 days. Ako kawiya ke naitagusit. Mitsa to isa minaniste wapataman. Mitsa to mistay 80 sikuni kani wak ekake ko ni wepeta magwagok. Ako ispie peta sige ko ni mosawiyak na itagusiw. Eko to mataki petu tiyak taki piane mutamaka our concerns. What matters the most is our territory where we live. We need to guide our territory. We need to stand in order for us to survive. Pugutani po is tamaswag. Because nobody can do it for us. We have to do it ourselves. And I'm sorry I forgot your names. The lady and the guy. I know I met you somewhere in Winnipeg. And we need more information. We need more guidance. We need more, what you call that? Like, we wanted a translator for the 3 days. Kasmana, that's what they used to do. They used to translate. The translator was always present in our meetings, but we cannot seem to find a translator nowadays. So, to elaborate more for the people to understand and lower the way we talk, because sometimes people don't understand, like high words. Some people don't understand. That's why people are not saying anything. That's why people don't want to say anything, or they don't want to ask you anything because of that. So next time we meet, maybe we can have more questions and concerns. Eko say, thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. I'll turn it back over to Chief and Council and Councilor Muswag, and I just wanted to say thank you very much for those comments, and that we'd be happy to provide whatever further information in a future meeting.
We had, so Rita had her hand up quite a while already.
Sorry? No problem.
Good afternoon. Sampo nga ini mo nino takawiyam yan. Ayo, kagipe si kiskinoma ko ako kisayat mawat sinistam from day one. Ha? Usampo ko nga nainuano mo takawiyam yan. Ako, erimis ko taman, mawat sinistam kagiapis si kateke. Una suewe na kina na utse. Tau sita ni wake. Kina na tapat sitak. Ang kaki apat ngaki wina wete ko Dr. Sidney Carrick. Wina kaki sipet tat wina kaki siki kemut iniwa kita usitan. Oo, nasay na kapmuta kanut takipmuta ko te anuts. Ako ani ma first written law ni mama sinay katek. Constitution tapo ko ta miskut sa kate ma kami na masinay kate ko ta ay first written law ni makitagi miskut tas tani wa ko nasay na. So they're open to ayo amend. But I'm gonna speak a little bit of English every once in a while, so the people here will understand what I'll be talking about in some cases. Okay, about these, what's being done for the policing here in Cross Lake is a very, very good idea. I agree with it. Maybe some others do too. Anyway, when pointing out fingers to our chief and council, I hear that lots. It's not true. I mean, it's not the chief and council's responsibility to run to take these dangerous steps because of drug dealers and all that. They will be targets too, and so are the people in their homes as well, and the people who work on this change of policing to our nation. Anyway, there are some parts that may or can be addressed by our the people here, Shelby and Jeff. Is that his name? Yeah. I'd like to express one of the most difficult situations that we have at home. Everything comes from within the house, the home. Discipline is very hard because of these laws that come into play with child family services. To put a little history on discipline, we people of our age were disciplined. We got straps, we got curfews, we did a lot of work because we were in trouble. Nowadays, nobody can do that in their homes. Maybe our leadership, with the help of others, should work on that. When we were children, I'm pretty sure some other people here can vouch for that. We used to be sent into the bush to go pick up our own whips, like red willows and all that. When our parents were not satisfied with the thinness of those twigs, we had to get sharper ones. That was discipline. We learned from there. And today, if you even put a finger or a hand on a child, then the child threatens to tell CFS. So from that point on, they start getting in trouble. Our children start getting in trouble. And it wasn't our fault, I would say, because we can't discipline them. The law protects them. So it's very hard. Kawin na nantay, tenita mo kaya tamin ni Mikaw kon. So mo na tapo makan. Kakin na kaya kon, kutsimatsu pa ni wiki kawiyak. Nistanigi kutsimatsu pa ni taka kaki kawani pa ni kaya kon. Tipinawen niwas kay kani. Ako ano maka kaya kanutsita ko policing. Maybe we could look at some points from kayo for discipline, our way. You know, our way, not the Canadian law way. Kinano ke maminako kitsa sinok ispinako sigite sa kanopate nano. Bisots kino taga pie kawita tus ke mae guguma oke. Kani mo ano mawita mako translate yan. Kani kuitap mae koy. Ito sa kinanas commit na umakay tatus ke. Nimineni ten maka poko isto na natanan katen ni Mr. Winaan ni mano kaya ako tatawa kaya ako matsiya tawa kaya ako kita kanop meo kinuati. Ang pani kita ya wewak tawi. Kinumatsiya wak ito siya kono poko kawita. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. I think those are very important points you did. To the lawyers, we will relay that information to you in terms of what she said later on. We are taking recordings, so you can read them afterwards. It's just pertaining to what is it that we have to take into consideration what we did, what we do, as everything starts from home. and how do we do that, and how do we look after ourselves as well, and how do we convey everything to law. So, but we have a transcribe been recording the stuff, so I'll get it transcribed and send it to you. And that's what she was saying, and that I will listen to it, then I'll transcribe it back to English and then send it to you. Thank you, Rita. Roy out. Jackson.
Hello. I have some legal questions to the legal counsel. My name is Jackson Osborne, one of the Elders Council. My first question is, are reserves dry reserves? That's my first question. Are reserves dry reserves? Second question, why are treaty Indians not allowed to drink on reserve? That's the second question. Third question, can RCMP stop a vehicle for nothing on reserve? Number 4, can RCMP go inside your house without a search warrant? And number 5, can RCMP arrest underage person under 17 without the parents present? These are my 5 questions, legal questions first. What's your reply?
Okay, so I had a little bit of issues hearing a couple of the questions, but let's go one by one. So the first question you had was about reserves.
That's right.
And what specifically are you asking?
Are we
about?
allowed to drink on reserves? And why not? Are we allowed to drink on reserves? And why not?
So our presentation was focused on Commissioner as a community, and we understand that there are a number of people on reserve and then some people outside of the reserve. I would say that if I understand your question, what we've looked at in terms of for Commissioner so far would encompass the community members of Commissioner.
I said on reserve, not in Minsigamak.
That might be a
I
question
said
we
on
have to
reserve, not in Minsigamak.
So you're saying on reserve, not Commissioner.
Right. If you don't know the answer, I'll tell you why. The answer is because of the Indian Act. The answer
Right,
is simply
okay.
the Indian Act. Indian Act says that Indian people cannot drink on reserve. And the Indian
Right.
Act is not our law. That's a white man's law.
Yes, no, I understand that piece. Okay, okay. You're saying the Indian Act creates those reserves and the Indian Act is not your law. And so are you asking if the Indian Act applies or doesn't
That's what it
apply,
says on
or-
the Indian Act. The Indian Act says that Indian people cannot drink on reserve. They'll just dry reserve.
Okay, I don't know if the mic changed a bit because we're having a little bit of audio issues and we have lost apparently our view of you guys, so it's a little harder for us to hear you.
I gotta hear what you say. See, the question is, the people that understand back home listening, why we are not allowed to drink in New York is because of the Indian Act. Indian Act, Indian Act. Indian Act is a legislation, it's not a law, it's a white man's law. We know
Yeah.
in New York.
Yes, so in
You
terms of
understand,
that
Green?
question, with the Indian Act, I think that's part of what Councilor Muswagon was speaking about earlier in terms of having a task force and having it look at specifically your laws, what those look like, how those would look in operation with a police service that is Commissioner specific, and moving away from having Indian Act laws, which is obviously a concern on that piece.
Okay, my second question.
Okay, so your second question was, and that's one of the ones I had trouble hearing.
Can RCMP stop vehicles for nothing on reserve? Can RCMP stop vehicles on reserve for nothing? Well, that's what's happening here in Cross Lake.
Sure. So I heard that one in terms of the RCMP operating on reserves. And I would just reiterate I guess like kind of the two focuses of what we presented in terms of
Shelby. Section 88 of the Indian Act allows provincial law and regulations to be applied to federal law. That's the answer. Yes, RCMP have the authority to stop vehicles on a reserve, and that's the section they use, Section 88.
Thank you, Counselor. It was just some of it was getting a little disjointed when the question was coming through, but yes.
A third question. Can RCMP enter a house without a search warrant? Can RCMP enter our reserves in our houses without a search warrant?
Can RCMP enter into your reserve, into your houses?
Can they?
That was your question. So I would say that the RCMP have police powers under legislation, but they're also bound by the charter and the Constitution. So they, like, for example, if an RCMP officer was walking down your street and they looked at your house and said, I don't like the look of that house, they can't enter your house on that basis.
With a search warrant or without it?
Yes, there has to be some kind of, like, if they see someone run into your house and if you're running into your house and you're being chased by somebody with a gun, that is obviously an emergency. That's different.
That's right.
The other thing is if they are walking down and they see you step out of your house and you point to them and you say, that house down there, I know it has drug dealers in it. They need to have some, I'd say, evidence and background to go into that house and arrest drug dealers. Because there are certain protections under the charter and the Constitution that the RCMP restricts the RCMP, so to speak, but it restricts all police across Canada.
And the other one is
can
the RCMP arrest a young person underage without parents' consent, without the parents present. This happened to me this summer, in reality. My grandson was 17 years old and the RCMP had arrested him under 17 without the parents present.
Okay. So I think I see the trend of the questions as being more related to the RCMP and their police powers and their authority. I would suggest that I appreciate the questions because they are obviously very useful and very helpful, given that our recommendation for a short to medium term solution is
the answer is every investigation is based on a case-by-case basis, depending on the nature of the crime. Okay, some of it requires search warrants in private residence. This is a technical question about residency. And I mentioned this earlier at the beginning of the meeting. Band membership are tenants on band-owned homes and on CMHE homes that are paid for by the band. So what needs to happen here is to bring clarity to band members and housing, rules of residency. That's why I said we need to have a separate meeting on housing to make people understand their tenant responsibilities. And it depends on the nature of a crime, whether it's a young offender or not. If it's a major allegation, the RCMP have authority to do what they need to do, to take steps, not only for public safety, for the safety of alleged persons. And that's what they do. They investigate. I don't think RCMP just go around for the sake of grabbing people. Unless they have evidence to do so, they will not bother anybody. And unless people have given written statements of account of what's happened, they don't act on hearsay. Okay, I just want to be clear on that. So, it's going to be a heated discussion to housing, and it's true. Many band members believe the house they occupy is their home. But the legal reality is, under the band administration and services, CMHE homes that are paid for by the band, and when they become, after they are paid for through CMHE, they become a band house. And if the band is paying for O&M, repairs and everything, then band members are tenants. Unless you paid for your own trailer, your own home, that's a different classification of ownership. Okay, and typically there's a certificate of possession for those homeowners. So when it comes to a search and seizure, so that's the answer to that question. I mean, this case is still active. Maybe it's not appropriate to be bringing it to a public meeting while the case is before the courts, because it might jeopardize the young person in question, to protect the integrity of that child. Maybe it's not good to bring it to the public light here, because we don't know the circumstances, because that matter is before the courts.
The legal counsel is on his side. I don't understand now. Me just I don't understand and trust the system. I'm still not swaying. That's not our loss, that's their loss. I just can't make. This is a good meeting. Good meeting. I read through what they need more meetings like this. And this to tayo ninyo kawasak. We can say a lot of things about discussion today. I want to show you that I'm going to say to tayo. What you do is to scale. That's a great time with tayo. Mo ito na naging legal lawyers tayo siya ko. So we don't understand the justice system in Iniyak. That's the white man law. I want it to my work. Kiputoy kami nga sinagok. Kitimay na na. Tanay si pamilya ko kakagpolsik. Tapi si ito kakagpolsik ako kakagpolsik. Tasya iludasi ko na sway the white man's law, justice system, Cross Lake or wherever I take the polsik. It's my tower siya ko sa akin. The people that experience the justice system. Muna simayan sa ito, uta simayan sa ito, Cross Lake. Mukha kita manok, kaya ito siya magok. And it shows that our culture, our way of life. Aba ito, binupanipan. Ito magok. Mga siyemita, siyemita simayan sa kuto, hindi pagniso. You don't understand our culture, that was the Cross Lake. You don't participate in our community. Well, you understand it, it understand it. What's the way big to my I was at Ross Lake. So that relationship has to be there. What did I to get to act? We have to work together. So my safety officers. What did I to get to act? Kitsi ko na bitu ko kitsi kewan. Nabi sa ano sa mas siagani man turayani man every day miniwan every day. That was what's the legal counsel. Well, my question is to what's the question? I just take on reserve, the try reserve. The schedule of the habits, not a try reserve. Last week, I'm not going to take with the point. I mean, you want to social what's the hurry? And it's getting worse and worse and worse. I'm going put out of the Nixon hingin ang miniwan yun. Any party mo siya miniwan sa asim na nusima. E pesyo na mincho ka niyo kasi kumpanya na mincho na rin miniwan yun. Hindi na ako na sa iyan. Outside my yard, I said miniwan yun last night. This story is na gusto no. Mga safety officers sa bagan sa months. Can this not work out? So we have to do something, but I don't know what it is. What about the trucks and alcohol, more of that, food leg and drug dealing? That's get to tobacco. So we don't have food leg raising drug dealers. I don't know the answer. I was the guys at 14, 15, I mean, you had 6. I guess go bed check. I felt up and asked one setting up more was cut so I mean at the Piscanic. But just lot to get a big up on the end. Pay up my guest going, Miss Canac, and he put him say that would talk Pagantoi, Miss Canac. I got to skinny a public hospital left and by on the highway. 1:30 in the morning. Nagitimagan. Wala ko ako the leadership. Gusto ko iskento mo. At siya politik. Ito yan naman, suti mga naman. I want to say a lot of things umahita kami nga. Ako sumabit pa. I was a chief and counsel. Thank you. Ito kaya kapi ang mag.
There's a thank you. Okay, any more questions for the lawyers? Marlon? Margaret?
Hello.
If there are
Hi. My name is Margaret. I'm one of the Women's Council for Bimichikamak. I have a question to ask. I know there's going to be more information about this policing. If people wanted to ask, like in a Western style, in an RCMP style, if there's something really bad happened in our community, maybe you could bring that to our people and get a translator tool for them to really understand, for our elders and for the people that don't really understand English. But I wanted to ask you, okay, just in Cross Lake, if something ever happened here in Pimichikamak, if there's a murder, like if there's a murder in a home, and then, so who will be doing more investigation, the Western style or our policing? So I think we should go more and focus on that to bring it to our people. I know it doesn't pass yet, but I'm pretty sure they will ask those kind of questions. And also, another question is about dogs. I know I'm affected by dogs. When it comes to dogs, the dogs are biting people. Not even a year that my uncle got killed by dogs. And it's very hard for me. I know my family, some of my family love dogs. And when you go to Winnipeg or anywhere else, the dogs are usually licensed. Even if you have to go get their poop in a yard or playground. I hope we could put that in your on your policing there too about dogs. And this policing, it's very interesting to have our very own policing in our community. Our Western policing, they're just going by our visitors. They don't know us. They don't know our people, who they are. Because some of our people are disability. They still walk around, they still get drunk, but they don't know who they really are. And most of the the way I see it, Western people, the way I see them, they go knock on other people's door to arrest somebody, which they don't usually sometimes understood. Now this policing that we're going to have in our own community, it's very interesting because these band constables will know our people more than them. And I find it, I wish, and I hope it passes. So next information put, maybe we could have that and get a translator to translate this more and to be a request to be advertised maybe a month early for the people to come to the meeting, because this policing is very important, very interesting for our community. And last, we had a women's wellness last week here in Cross Lake, and we honored 7 of our band constables, women. 7 band constables, women. We honored them as women gathering, that they do a good job in our community, and that it's very dangerous where they are. That's what we told them, even though they have their own families and their own partners. And they were so happy that we did that for them, to recognize them, because not too many times that I've seen for the band constable to be acknowledged, something like that. So the more we respected our our safety officers in our community, maybe our nation will be more respectful to them too, instead of them calling them down all the time. Safety officers are very important to me. They help me a lot through my work and in my family, and anything that I need, I always call them first to help me. So I hope it passes, and Chief and Council, maybe we could get a translator for our elders and for the community that don't really understood English. I use a question. We have to be very careful because this is very serious where we're heading. Thank you.
So I can respond really quickly. I can say that we would be happy to attend a next meeting in terms of both providing more information and would be happy to attend a meeting where a translator is present, because we understand that there maybe that language barrier, and it's likely easier for people to ask questions in their own language. So happy to do that for our next meeting whenever that would be scheduled. And in terms of the other comments and questions that you had, I just wanted to thank you for your comments in terms of the safety officers and the role that they play, and that in terms of the laws and the Western, as you put it, the Western versus Commissioner style, like if there's a murder, like who does more of the investigation? I think that that's all part of a broader, more long-term conversation. And as Councillor Muswagon had mentioned about, you know, having that task force to create that policy and that framework on what that would look like for a Michkamack service, and in the case of a murder or another major crime, you know, what resources would Michkamack look for outside of the service, or what assistance and what level of involvement there would still be with the RCMP. So I think those are all outstanding questions as Michkamack looks at the different policing models and works towards something that is best suited for the communities and the issues that you're facing. I have to apologize, but myself and my colleague David, we are needed at another meeting. So we're, if there's any further questions right now, otherwise we will have to also step away.
All right, I got a question. It's regarding the youth and what's been going on with community regarding dogs attacking people. And my question is, I know there hasn't been a animal shelter, or nothing really being done regarding, or even animal control. What I would really appreciate is somehow, with this policing, is it part of animal control? To my understanding, or is it different topic?
We're getting way off topic with everything. This meeting was about policing. We shared the information about the current policing contract is with the RCMP and the province of Manitoba. And what we explained at the beginning of the meeting was that they were not doing an adequate job fulfilling their contract. And there's not enough members here. They're flying people out, and we're not an isolated detachment. There's supposed to be a minimum of 23 to 32 members here, but that's not happening. And what's dangerous about that particular flying model, when they bring in new members here, they don't know the community, they don't know the people. And it puts people at risk when they respond, especially to serious complaints. With respect to all the other social issues, just a little bit of history. William Osborne, when he was a councillor, brought the dog bylaw here. There was a public meeting about dog bylaw. He got sabotaged. Animal activists said, no, you're not going to go build a dog pound out of town. You pay for our gas, you pay for our food, and you're going to pay workers to go there. Leadership brought proposals forward to deal with the dog problem. Then people rebelled politically when we tried addressing the dog problem. Then we have animal activists that don't want dogs shot. Then they don't want to come and get the dogs. So we're stuck in the middle with this whole thing. But it seems like, from a policing standpoint, it seems like dogs have more rights than our people. Right? And that's why it's so important that we work towards our own policing model. Okay, we need to bring our solutions forward. Okay? Our safety officers and our ambulance people get sent first. And they're experiencing a high rate of trauma and very little support service for them in terms of counseling, post-traumatic stress disorder. I use debriefings. Ako ge Beg Simagans, the kit and clothes and salary, August RCMP is roughly 280,000 a year. Our safety officer program is about 300,000 for all of them. That's why it's so important to work towards our own policing. This justice minister that we sent these letters to, the ones that you guys got copies there, they have not responded to our plight to try and get him to exercise his authority as a justice minister to force the RCMP to bring adequate police officers here. They've ignored us. That's what those letters were about. That's why the lawyers are saying the mandamus order, to force the justice minister to exercise his authority to tell the RCMP you're in breach of your contract. Okay? That's what those letters, just to show you that we just don't sit in the back as chief and counsel. There's a lot of legal and technical work that we're working with. Terry's got a plan and working towards keeping our community safe. But we need to work with him, not maul him and ridicule him. He knows what he's doing. He's been there before. And there's other members that have retired from other police forces that are from here that we want to be bringing back to be part of that task force. This is not an overnight solution, but it's a start towards our healing journey to keep our community safe. And it's going to take all of us, every one of us, to make a conscious decision, especially addictions, especially the ones that have families. What do you love more? This beautiful little child God gave you to raise, or your habits? Each one of us has been there with addictions. Each one of us has to make that conscious decision as a human being. Dan siya we siya pinigyak, kiwi minano, or do we keep enabling? We can stack bylaws here for the community. But if you're not going to stop, it's not going to matter. The driver's bylaw, how long has it been there? Even right from past leaderships. The same people that in our leadership, they want to enforce paper, but at the same time, all of us at one point in time in our life were drinkers. We drank. I'll be surprised for somebody to come and say, what's we got to sing to pay taga migisin? Because remember, this is a deeper root from residential school, intergenerational impact, how people have been traumatized by genocide. We're a sick and dying people as a result of the laws that were made by the colonizer. But kinano pogo, we're going to have to sit around in a circle to talk about public safety. We have to, each one of us has to start taking responsible steps to make this work. If people are going to resist, you can't push against a rope. We're going to have to pull it together. That's another issue on justice. Dogs are actually not bad animals if they're trained. But neglected dogs that don't know people, of course they're going to bite. But people that want to keep dogs, how do you want to hold them accountable for leading their dogs to lead astray and bite people? There needs to be a level of responsibility by dog owners. It's no different from the drug dealing that's happening. We're even enabling dogs to bite people. We're part of the problem, Kaagano, as a whole community. Whether we want to like to hear that or not, but it's a fact. And chief and council's hands are tied. Health workers, their hands are tied. There's a lot of stuff we want to do, but it's going to take cooperation from everybody. Everybody. Okay? Justice system ke peta no tay. We're only focusing on policing right now. We know the justice system has failed our people. We know the courts have failed our people. 80% of the people in jail are native. Because we keep trying to follow a system that's failed us for 150 years. A policy of cultural genocide. That's what's happening. The criminality, they criminalized our people after what they've done to our people in history. To know our history, why we're hurting people, and what we need to do to change. That's why one of the options was a land-based. If you really look at these reserve systems, they're open-air prisons. The number you carry in your card is not a treaty card. It's an Indian status number. Treaty cards stopped to exist in 1951. Canada walked away from that, and it wasn't even him we made treaty with. It was the Crown and Right of Great Britain. That's why it's so important. It's more important than ever when it comes to your land and human rights and your treaty. So our job is to share information, bring the team of experts to bring you the information. To bring solutions together. That's the only way we're going to make it work. Sydney. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Ito tamiskat na Chief. Una suway niyo, kiteyak, inyo kantul tameguta, panmiding umang, panimutsigatek. Nasis nimenitin, nistagi sigawan itit, ay tapmiyak, o kimagano, uniga niyo, nimenitin niyo mittagok, etul tamek, epeta muayo kewana kita, animutagi inyo. This is very important subject matters that we're talking about, policing, justice, and public safety. It's always been a concern for the people of community, for their safety, for their children, grandchildren, and the people. Let me first extend my thank you to Councillor Maswagan for the letter that he sent out to the Minister of Justice. That's a good letter. Did you get a response on that letter? I think it's appropriate to follow it up because it's very important matter because the number of officers that we're supposed to have, we're not getting that. We're shortchanged again. Back in 1994-95, we were pursuing them to take over the justice policing federally. But we kind of backed away because they told us you're going to lose your public policing station. And we backed away. I said, I don't want to disrupt the project because we do need a new police station. So that's one issue that needs to be dealt with, the follow-up. Another matter, a shooting incident just recently. I just wanted to bring it to attention to the people up in the video. The shooting, the RCMP did not issue emergency alert to the people of Cross Lake. Only the chief did that. And it's not his work. The police people are supposed to be doing that to inform the community that there was emergency alert going around at that time, and not our chief. But I'm glad the chief took over that responsibility, but someone had to do it. And thank you, Chief. Kagit naman ni matawag kayo. We have a number of areas that I need to express, also to kind of extend possible recommendations. In 1994, we went to New Zealand. My chief and other people to explore what the youth were doing in about incarcerations, the youth that was doing wrong. And we bought a model. Minustatan Ministrin. That's the model that we brought back. I say it's working. When am I going to go? We're not fully implementing it, and not too many people are using it to their advantage. So you need to encourage the community to build that program so we can make it work. In 1997, MKU took over a model First Nation Justice Strategy, 1997. That's still ongoing, and it's still working. But more and more needs to be done on it. Because the court system, there's about 3,000 backlog remand cases that are happening on a monthly basis. It could be more now, but needs to be dealt with accordingly. The Aboriginal Justice Inquiry of 1990, nothing has happened on that. But there's so many issues that our people experience bad history. And it's not appropriate to just leave it at that. The government is responsible to correct what's wrong, to make it good for our people. Because we were not treated properly. We were mistreated. I want to mention about Band Constable. Back in the year 2010, they asked us what do we need to do about Band Constable program. And it's an old policy. That's probably the oldest policy in the federal government system, 1971. It was never amended. It was never revised. And I think it's still there. They must have taken that away. And they offered us to use safety officers. And we said no. What's the purpose of establishing a safety officers? It's a kind of a cadet program that they probably don't have authority to take people in, to put them in jail. They're just there to drive around and look what's happening with the people that need safety issues. There's a requirement for a youth center, remand center for be brought in for the north. Those youth that are waiting for jail, they have to be shipped in the south. And they have to come back again to come to the court hearing in the north. And that shouldn't be happening. Our children are being put in a risk when they travel on the highway. And it's an unfortunate situation. That should not be happening. Chief and Council, there are lots of work ahead of you. We need to explore different areas that need to be worked on. And I said to you, do it. Don't wait for us. Do it. Walk ahead of us. That's what I was told from my elders in the past. Don't wait for your people to go with you. You're the leader. Take advantage of leading our people. And take advantage of initiatives that are required. And they told me as well, they're waiting for you to make a mistake. But when they don't see a mistake, they'll be there standing with you. And that's what's happening at times as well. how important that kind of a principle setting on it. Kapag ito agad sa kana peu, kana peinan, yutamit kimit nanota, kung ano mo na yun, kagiatos ka atin, eutamita ka, eutamita, yawan ni mais manimu ako mo, mat kita'y namatnan. Inyok, tayo namuata niyo, niya niyok, tatutay ko tatus kayo niyo, kano tamigo, support them, encourage them, to give them that support, that unnecessary, unconditional support. Ego gawit mitno, tayo na magok, kano tamiyata ni Huta, kikina na po ito na miswa, puta to skati-hati yun, to apat na magigon, tatagutan niyo. So I encourage that Chief and Council, Assistant. I echo that how it's important that is. Pepo kikisipuetan yun, our personal sa February 1990. Our personal justice initiative, 1998, we signed an agreement in 2000. And we made a law. You each to draft up the law. Nina ko gimagana ko tangi ichiyonan. Northern Authority ni matausitan niyo tapit tagan ni makina na taga no patama at child welfare. And it did happen. Government of Canada we need to look at Royal Commission of Aboriginal Peoples, RCAP, 1991. There are good things in there that we can use to support our work on the matters that we're dealing with. Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Public Service Call for Action, 57 items. Public policy, education, and self-government. And these are the calls for action. There's so much that needs to be discussed and worked on. This matter is very important, subject matter that we're talking about. I would say start taking over the court system. Start initiating that. Start taking over the RCMP safety officers and other programs as well. Ayun, kipeichiga po istat no gumagawa na swenyo. Pagkiskenit tamanin, maganita ako, kitatuskenyo. Nasis ko sigon mi na kitatuskenyo. Hindi ko tangi pepin. Muna uchuet tanista. Kagipet skataman. Magamunan niyo chinimugan. Gitaw man o tatuskeyo. Nigane, anut yan. Kapit na na. March. Ego kita tuin. Atsit na muya kegon. Ego sige to, ane ego mitsen. Ego kama iti tamato ko kanima. Ega mitunita gomi siyek. Ega ta iskat siyek. Tanatay ko gimawak. Ito tamoy ko kanima. Ego kanima, Councilor Maswagan, follow up that letter. It's important. Don't let it die on us. On the table. Make it work. One more subject matter, Bimitsingama Cree Nation. We're probably the 10th largest First Nation community in Canada. And I would say we are seventh in Canada. Magani Bisawit, Tiskonigano. We're a very progressive community. And we need to keep doing that, to be more aggressive on what we need to do. On the sovereignty issue as a nation, yes, There's certain times that we need to work alone. But I also said to you, Chief and Council, inyo akong tutay. Mas kagipe ako tutena nagaginagawan puta ichigapo istago, ichigapo istago the other communities. Kita po tamamotas kaya utawetan gipe ichi wanista. Gusta nagasin atuskein. Ichigapo istago istepia ichigapo istas. So I'm saying two things. Sovereignty, yes. Work as a nation alone when there's time to work on subject matters that are important for our community. But I also say on a secondary issue that Cross Lake needs to work with other First Nations to make sure that we get support, whatever we want from them, and we can support them as well. So that's very important to understand it. Egatagi pego tutamak, ate nagiskeni tamaw gitana no. Egoy na ngagiton. Ni pogo mitsa mainyo. Ini poga na no. Ini tawatos kana na mina. Umi nagin nagachita nagayon tutamak. Kanes kachitan. Let's do what we need to do. Let's pull up our socks and let's get to work together. Wichiga po istota ne kukimao na sueño gagonyo subetati. Kana pagi chia pamuk. La escuela mautati kurchi sa sipet maga. So thank you very much for listening. Nina Sitniger, an elder for Cross Lake Nation. That was it.
Thank you very much, Sydney. Okay, I know that's his name. Shelby, you're free to go. Thank you for.
Thank you we're grateful to have attended virtually, and as Julian had said, we do apologize for not being available in person, but we were grateful to attend with you today, and thank you everyone for sharing all your stories. We hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Heretic pa bago to sa iyo. Ayo po ito, ito na nasko mo nang gait tamuya kay sige miya sa tasig ito tama gabi na tisya pinag minani ka mamitani tamay tasig Hispaniwa ka soma piazza mo ka sa ako minuta ka na matapat sitag ni record ti na no tani ako record ti istanet ana ang sita na nagsitaya minastay go sitag ay sa tatapat sitag ito minagi tom ka pitti ko na no. Estamos mo po paskite na mga sa tasit nutsitak. Ego to mo na tapos tatag isto. Kakade mga mo yago matamasi tag sa mga Hispaniwag. O tati pasugo na mga ma si mga sa tatiao kina na tipene mga tat nutsita chik ego na tinita matan nutsita chik. Ego mo chik ego tamak. Ago nagotsita na no mo tayo Temis tamage oge sa utagaya tsugisto to ichiwa oge. Ego ne mata letters ka isabet sa igatego. Ego to uchamago skawa oge ne these two-pronged approaches, one from the band, one from our nation. Our sovereignty, we have to have our own policing force on the sovereign side, but we also have to make sure we have instruments, which is the band through that way. We use that the bagos kawago we to to tapat sita ganimeno wana sueno kapag meskago chiso kapetsai ganimeno ego opata ma yo to sa tagi magos kapag ano tagi pis sora na tapi tapmigwa to sita ge wan ginano ego ma chige to tama nasus na nas kamana sita pie ga seminagi toma san stagi sigawa ne agotea ogi tom ga pena no ma we'll try probably to do the same 3 days kaya to tanagi tom just so we can get an update as to where we are. Nasipet tanan o rated sitne. Putanan, we'll come back and are we on the right track or not? And minot so na miso check without se. Maging itapana na gusto out for Traditional Council. We start kita check the past kita negate tamama upita again. So I thank for the 4 council members from the elders and the women's and the youth for being here. We saw again. And I thank everyone here. The citizens are always have the power. You guys have a say. So that's how we're moving forward. With your support, we will move forward, you know. Ako naman kahit naman sa, guys, at least pa rin man na Facebook, patutete, mo sigate, o man mo sa tagitut sigate na, guys. You know, for those people, there'll be another meeting. Come to the meeting. Come to the meeting and come participate and have your say here, have your voice heard. You know, sipira na no man stay kay na mga sipira na nis na nagyaya manen tute na sa sago gaman ato masay kay agnis na ako truck testing. We are moving on truck testing. We did it first. The council did it first. Then we did the school, and we're moving on to the other programs as well. So we're moving ahead, but we're not doing it to punish people. We're doing it to find out what's going on and see how can they become healthier. Tapos sige sintawiya ako kanina timisko ako. Sabi na ko si tas pineo okay. Muna tate papakinit sigo tate pastewot sigo si isa. Agora ano po nga gito ang pitama mitsot sayo kinanas kapit no. I thank everybody that's listening out there. I know some people have been texting and sending messages on some ideas. You know, I record that as well. We're recording these things for the people that are out there. Come if you get a chance, join us. I know people saying, "Oh, we should have been advertised." It was advertised and it was on radio from time to time. And since August 5th, we try to give notice as soon as we made that decision with the Port Council, telling us we should have these meetings, and we did. So we sent out the notice right away, and that was on August 5th, and then we've been advertising it. So take responsibility to try and find out what's going on in your community. You know, and work with us. We'll work with you. And that's what we're trying to do. We'll try to take the lead and you gotta asko. So forgive us if we make some mistakes along the way. Along the way. So thank you, everybody. Have a good evening, and I'm gonna have ask our elder chief. I'm gonna put you to work and we'll sing prayer. Kaya mo yan, tagipaman eh.
Kaya ako sa muna kinogas ni nang ginipoin so sa stay sitting. Ako sa kananas ko muna na isayo. Ewa makaki mama opiak kikwe ayagis sa kaya ko na ni pakit na magisa kisna no kakinamatsi wak. Nanas ko mga kisanista hunika niwak kakisi wapat ni kwakok. Ako kiti si Papa Swentuak, kanto tamuha naman to. Tawid siya wikuak, minani kiwisto takiskisto tawakok. Eka kami nuene mo sa kanots. Takiskisto taway ko kino, utayamiawak. Tayamiesta muayakok. Minaunika niwak, minatatuta, kagipenate kuakok. Epewid siya etsik. Ekusana in Jesus' name, amen.